Hello, and welcome to the Freed Black Girl Podcast. This show is a guide to self liberation, pulling the curtain back on healing through the power of storytelling. This show is dedicated to any and everyone doing the work to free their inner child, and for those with a desire and not quite knowing where to begin. My name is Najma Ahmed, and I am the host and creator of the Freed Black Girl podcast. I'll take you on my own journey to liberating the little black girl in me. Thank you for coming along on this ride to our collective freedom. Because as Fannie Lou Hamer said, nobody's free until everybody's free. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Freed Black Girl podcast called Freed Abundance. How I became unbought and unbossed. Word to Shirley Chisholm. If you're watching on screen, check out my shirt. I love it so much. But this episode of the Freed Black Girl podcast is a bit of a continuation from the last episode. So, as always, if you haven't watched the previous episodes, make sure you go back and check them out. But as I've been moving on my healing journey, and after I worked to begin healing my spirituality and connecting with the ancestors, connecting with spirit in a deeper way, one of the things that began to happen was that I shifted my understanding of what abundance actually was. Growing up, we grew up in neighborhoods where we were often the only Black folks that lived there, or we lived around a few Black folks and went to school with predominantly white people in the neighborhoods that I lived in. And it was because at that time, my mom was working sometimes 3 jobs just to keep us in those neighborhoods. So we had access to a good education. And so I grew up in these kind of ebbs and flows around having what we needed. At some points in time, I remember in my childhood, we would have everything. We would be literally like eating caviar. I was like, an 8-year-old eating caviar and, got crab legs and lobster and all kinds of stuff, and, going to the movies and going out and have fun. And then there were some points where we had nothing, where we didn't have any food in the house, where, we were having to move a lot. I think I moved probably, oh gosh, I think I lost count at some point, but I think I went to like 8 different schools within the span of probably 8 years. And so changing schools every year, moving around. And so my foundation around kind of money, resources, things like that has always been steeped in uncertainty, been steeped in scarcity, been steeped in trauma that was passed down. I think um, it's really interesting because my grandparents actually were all on both sides. My maternal and paternal grandparents were fairly solidly middle class. My um, paternal grandmother was a teacher. My paternal grandfather worked at the steel mill, and he had been in the military before that. At certain points, they owned property. Same thing on my maternal side. My maternal grandmother was a nurse. My maternal grandfather worked at the hospital as well, also a retired military veteran. And it was so interesting to me that when it got to my parents' generation, because of trauma, because of all of these different things, that they experienced a different life, and and then I experienced a different life. And so those traumas that are not healed, they continue to pass down, and they become more and more and more acute until they are addressed. And so it really manifested in my own life that I really never learned. Nobody ever sat down and taught me, this is how you do a budget. This is how you manage your money. Everything that I saw was you get money, you spend it, and then it'll come back at some point. And then you keep doing this and you get into these stress cycles, almost like challenging yourself or challenging myself to be able to figure it out. I think I got to a point where I was almost impressed at my ability to come to the brink of, the struggle. And then all of a sudden something would happen where at that time I thought that I would just figure something out. Now that I know that despite myself, God, the universe, the ancestors, spirit was protecting me from myself and my spending habits, but it was just an ongoing cycle for me for years and years and years. I almost can't even believe that I'm even saying it out loud because I had so much shame around my lack of kind of money management skills and knowledge. And it was also, when I look back, I worked in higher education. And so for the majority of my adult life, from when I graduated from college until um, probably like 6 or 7 years after that. There were some points in there where I had my own apartment, maybe for like a year or so. But for a long time, I worked in residence life. And so I had an apartment on campus and then included all of my utilities and bills. So for a good, 6 years there, about 6 or so years, I wasn't even having to pay bills. I wasn't having to think about it, anything like that. And so when I finally did leave residence life, and got my own spot, I think at that point I was like 30 or something. And so it was kind of a new way of operating for me. It's like, okay, well, all right, I need to, and I'm living in Washington, D.C., which is not cheap, right? And so it was kind of just starting to figure things out on my own. There wasn't really any kind of, like I said, example or anything that I got outside of the dysfunction that I saw and how money was managed in my family. And so I just carried that with me for the longest throughout my own career. But when I started my own business in 2021, um, all of it came to the forefront. All of my money issues, all of my scarcity issues, um, kind of, and it wasn't even being afraid for me, so I'm a little bit grateful, for the recklessness, right? We also, in the trauma, we have the wisdoms and the gifts, and so, for, I guess looking at the other side of it, I'm a little bit grateful because I think, my delusion kind of allowed me to not be afraid when I was quitting my job. There was an initial fear, right? Like, okay, what is this gonna look like? How am I gonna pay my bills? Like, how is this money gonna come in? But as I said before, in my past, I had always come to the brink and figured it out. And so I was like, well, this isn't going to be any different. This is it. I don't think that God will bring me this far. The ancestors will bring me this far for this to fail. And so I was just like, okay, well, I have my, retirement. In case things get rough, I can cash that out. And, I had some savings as well. And so when I was looking at the prospect of leaving my job, it was like, well, I think I can really sustain myself right now without any clients or anything, gratefully. And I know this is a privilege, but at least at minimum for 6 months, 6 to 8 months or something like that. It was about 6 to 8 months that I knew that I would be okay. And so that was the kind of foundation of delusion, but it was still, um, you know, kind of figuring it out as I went on. And so starting my business, it was a blessing because I had been in a space in my career where people knew who I was. And so I was able to get clients fairly quickly. Actually, I had clients before I even quit my job. I already had projects and things lined up. And so money started flowing in, and I was still able to, live in the same way that I was living before. I was actually making more on my own than I was making at my old job, but it still felt like I was scrambling and I was, kind of money was coming in, it was going out, it was coming in, it was going out, and not in any like, organized or strategic way. And so it was still causing me stress. And it was like just this cycle. I would be like, I'll be better at this next time when I get paid, and I'll plan it out. And the next time would come, and then, a little bit of time would go by, a couple weeks or whatever, and it's like you look at your bank account and you're like, "Who robbed me? Who stole my money?" And then it's like, "Oh, it's me." Like, well, when did that happen? Like, when did I spend this money, right? And it was like this unconscious pattern that I was stuck in. And so as I'm healing and as I'm understanding our conscious versus our subconscious, I began to realize that my patterns with money, because I would journal about it. And as I was writing in my journal, I'm like, this sounds familiar. And I would like scan back in my journal. It's like, girl, because you wrote about this 3 months ago and you're still on the same cycle of rinse and repeat. And so I had got to the point where I understood, oh, this is a deeper pattern for me. This isn't just a matter of making better choices and deciding that, I'm going to save and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z and I'm going to figure out, all of these things. I realized, and talking to my therapist and speaking with her about just different things that I was dealing with around finances and money. And it even took me a long time to even bring it up in therapy because there was such a deep shame around it. I felt like because I was at where I was at in my career that I was supposed to know, all of these things. And me being me, me being a Virgo, I typically know a lot about a lot, but I also am hyper aware of what I don't know. And so this was one of those big glaring kind of, oh, this is something I don't know anything about, so I need to hide it. That was my mode of operating at that time, is that I don't know something. I don't want people to know that I don't know, so I need to hide it. And so didn't mention it to my therapist probably for a couple years. I mean, I brought it up, but I didn't talk about the depth of it. And so I took some time to really just, and I suggest, if you feel like you have issues or these cycles with money, that you do this. I started with writing down my entire history with money from childhood and beyond. I made a whole timeline. And when I did that, when I could take a bird's eye view, when I could take a step back, I was like, this is so clear that this is something that I have inherited, and then it is something that I, growing up, having such a up and down roller coaster, having moments where I was just longing for all of these things, looking at East Bay magazine, looking in like the little Delia catalogs, looking, Columbia House. I think Columbia House Records was my first foray into bad credit. I don't know why these people were sending packages to a 10-year-old, but I was, ordering for a penny these CDs and cassette tapes. That's how old I am. I still had a cassette player. Um and then never paying for them. So it was like, as a child, money wasn't real. It was like, I'm gonna just order this thing and they're gonna send it to my house. And now I have it and I'm gonna go about my life. And so it was like, it I my foundation, I could see it so clearly. Like I said, when I sat back and I made that timeline. And then the next, not the immediate next thought, but eventually something that came to me was, I think I need a therapist that really focuses on money issues and issues around dealing with money, managing money, saving, emotions around money. And so I just Googled and I was like, is that a thing? I want a financial therapist. Turns out it is. And she is on this episode today. So get excited. My own financial therapist. But one of the first things that we started to talk about was the shame and how that keeps us in these cycles, and that shame thrives in isolation, and so the hiding of it all and not even talking about it. And so when I first even just started talking about it, I felt my body relax. I felt my nervous system come off guard, just to be validated in that way. And so I highly recommend, like I said, tracing your story and then finding a financial therapist where you can begin to do the deeper work beyond the actions that you're taking with money. And it is not just overspending money issues, because it can swing the other way. Once I started to get a hold on things a bit more, then I really got a hold on things and I was just hanging on. I was like, I can't spend anything because, and so it turns into this battle between kind of scarcity and abundance, and understanding, the difference between the two. And I remember when I first kind of started learning about abundance, I thought of it about, and I'll talk more about it in the later episode. I was thinking about it purely around money, how much money you have, and that you'll always, this idea that you'll always have all the money that you need. And my understanding broadened around that as I was going through my healing journey. And we'll talk more later in the episode about what is abundance, and how you can begin tapping into it. But also, as someone who has her own consultancy and is doing this work, it was a rethinking once you leave these jobs, once you leave, getting a 9 to 5 paycheck and somebody pays you to do whatever this thing is in the job description. And then they add on, 50 more things, other duties as assigned. And so you start tying your value to this place that you work at. And it's very different when you go out on your own. When you go out on your own, it's really, for me, in the way that I operate in my business, it was, this is the future, this is the world that I'm envisioning, and this is how I feel that I can contribute to it and how I can support others to get us to where we want to be. So it wasn't even just, at first it was like, this is a business and I'm a CEO and all that. For probably like the first year, that was how I was thinking about my business. But as it began to evolve, I really started to understand, this is beyond a business. This is an expression of me. And when we are getting contracts and things like that, the money that we're bringing in, it's really about an exchange of energy. I saw something on the internet and it said, I get paid for being me. And that's what it is. Like, I am bringing myself to my work, and I am bringing, my love of strategy, my love of people and helping people, and figuring out or allowing different ways that that can manifest to come through. And so that looks like my coaching, my consulting, now this podcast, and any number of 50 million ideas that I have rolling around my head um, any single day. And so it helped me to understand that this is bigger than monetary abundance. This is about the abundance of joy, an abundance of purpose, an abundance of fulfillment and connection. And that is really resonating, in that once you move out of this scarcity, thinking that things can only look one way, I can only get what I need by working in a 9 to 5, that, nobody will pay me for showing up as myself and being myself. That's all linked to scarcity. Abundance is I can show up exactly how I am. I can show up authentically. I could show up intentionally. And maybe everybody won't like it. Maybe everybody won't agree with what I have to say, but it will always be enough. It will always be enough for whatever that purpose is that I'm in that situation for. But before, I get into the next part of our conversation where I welcome our guest, who I'm so excited to have, I actually wanted to read something from you all, or to you all, excuse me, from someone that I follow on Instagram. It's an awesome account. It's called Woman of the Womb. And she does a lot of coaching, particularly around spiritual entrepreneurship. And something that she said in this thread that I want to read to you all was becoming an entrepreneur is deeper than money or simply working for yourself. It is deeply spiritual. It is an initiation. It is a journey through shadow work. It is an alchemical process of converting creative energy into physical matter. It's an initiation into becoming the master of your own self, the master builder, the master material manifester. Once you realize that you can take any creative thought you have and turn it into physical, tangible money, that is one of the biggest awakenings to your spiritual magic. It challenges you to redefine what you think of as valuable. The simple things you do every day, the things you know and are good at, the things you love and are passionate about and hold value. We just haven't been conditioned to see ourselves in this way. We have to use our imaginations to envision a new future where work is also synonymous with play, freedom, authenticity, purpose, integrity, alignment, ease, rest, and enjoyment. If you cannot believe that this is a possible reality for you, then you will never put in the work to make that reality possible. You are not becoming an entrepreneur. You are simply regaining control of your own ship. You are not building a business. You are using your passions, gifts, and talents in a way that will benefit other people as they return that energy in the form of money back to you. You are not marketing yourself, you're sharing what you know, and the people who want to learn from you value your knowledge, and so they exchange energy in the form of money with you. You are not hustling, you're being adaptable with your creative energy to create what needs to be created within the season that it's called for. You're not making money, you're acquiring the necessary tools that'll help you become an even better navigator of your vessel to help steer yourself in new directions that didn't seem possible before. You are not doing anything for a living except living and being who you are and sharing that with other people and making your life work for you, not the other way around. And at the end of all of that, you return and recycle your energy back into the community to help build other people up and show them how to do what you did so that they can make their own way out of the darkness and into the light. So they too can become masters of their own ship. And again, that is from the Instagram account. Mothers of the Womb. I highly suggest following her. But I wanted to share that because that so perfectly articulated what my current understanding of abundance is. When I work with my coaching clients, I literally already kind of coach them with that lens. So when I saw that post, I was like, this is perfect. It beautifully articulated um, all of my philosophy around the shifting way that I see abundance and how it has helped me to rethink my relationship with money, rewire my brain to now think about money in a different way. And it is a constant evolution that I am still learning about. But we'll talk more about that later in the episode. So let me get to introducing our guest experts that I'm so excited to have you all hear from today. Asia Evans is a licensed mental health counselor, speaker, and author specializing in financial therapy. With over a decade of experience, Asia is determined to help more people break the taboo of keeping money and emotions secret. In addition to her practice, Asia is the president elect on the board of the Financial Therapy Association, consults with fintech companies, and is the author of Feel Good Finance, out this December. Asia has been featured in a variety of major news outlets, including the New York Times, Business Insider, NerdWallet, Time, and Teen Vogue. Asia is on a mission to get more people engaged in living their best lives while attuning to their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors around money. Outside of work, you can find Asia chasing after her two young children as they hunt down the next delicious place to eat. Nakia Drummond is an award-winning leader, entrepreneur, and educator with 20 years of diversity, equity, and inclusion, organizational and project-based strategy and change management expertise. She views her career as a tapestry of experiences that have unlocked her purpose. After nearly a decade in public education management, Nakia founded NLD Strategic, an equity-centered management consulting firm that supports strategy development, implementation, and measurement in social impact organizations and businesses. Experiencing and hearing other Black women's challenges in starting and scaling businesses, she founded She's Well Networked Incorporated and the membership network, the Women Entrepreneurship Leadership Lab, The Well, to radically shift and deepen investment in Black women entrepreneurs by creating spaces where we can heal, tell our stories, and invest in our own assets. Most important to Nakia, she is a proud mother of son Asher, bonus mom to daughter Casey, and the wife of her best friend since fifth grade, Jason. Right, welcome. I am so excited to have this conversation. Welcome, Asia. Welcome, Nakia. I really wanted to have this episode, as I was talking beforehand, about my own journey to entrepreneurship, everything that came up for me along the way. But I wanted to bring in two experts who work at the nexus of mental health and entrepreneurship. And so, as I was talking earlier in the episode, just about, how when I was going through my own healing journey, realizing that I need to go to therapy, working on the mind part, the mental part of it, then moving into my body, how I was processing trauma through my body. And then, as you all heard, if you've watched that episode and the Freed Body episode, one thing that was critical for me was really understanding my past, understanding my lineage, understanding the things that I was carrying with me that was either I wasn't recognizing that could help me, or what were some of the things that were bringing up blockages, excuse me, that I needed to move through. And when I got to this point, after I talked about quitting my job or leaving my job, starting my own business, I really had to grapple with the fear that was coming up. And once I started to ask myself those questions, and we talk about getting curious with ourselves about where the fear was coming from, I realized that this was just brand new to me. I was in this space of where now I was not operating in the space where I was getting a check, right? Every 2 weeks. We have that security, that safety where we know this money is coming in. But when you go out as an entrepreneur, it's like, oof, man, I gotta do all this. This is all on me. And so all these things started to come up, me telling myself, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not good with money. The shame around it, feeling like at this age, I should have been better with money. I should have had a better understanding of money, understanding how to access it, how to make it work for me. All these things that we hear, we see on the internet, all these things that we should be doing. And so for me, I found that I kind of just kept it to myself and tried to figure it out as much as I could until it got to a space where I could feel that number one, it was overwhelming, the stress trying to figure out the things that I didn't know, or how to access certain things or get the support that I needed. And so I realized that I needed some additional help. And so I started Googling, getting curious, like I said, and something came to mind. And I was like, I need a financial therapist. And I was like, does that even exist? Like, what is a financial therapist? I started looking. And so that's when I came across Asia. And so as I've had different people on the podcast, Asia is actually my financial therapist. And so from the work that we've done together, um, just I think one of the most powerful things have been reshaping the way that I just think about money, my shame around money, understanding that so many of us are experiencing such similar circumstances. And I think one of the things, and I'll let you talk in a minute, but that you told me that stuck with me so much was that the shame is the thing that is debilitating. That once we come out of isolation, that shame is no longer allowed to thrive in this space. And so being able to connect with other like-minded folks, Black women, women of color who are in this entrepreneurial space that are going through similar things have been such a game changer for me. And again, really thinking or rethinking what abundance really even is. And I talk about that a little bit before we got to this portion of the episode. But I would love to hear from you both what your own definitions of abundance really look like for work.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to dive into these conversations because I feel like we don't talk about them enough. So, I mean, there's so much, right? There's so
Yeah,
much
yeah,
in what
yeah.
you said. There's so much in thinking about abundance, but the way I like to think about it is almost in different words. So, abundance to me is thinking about, yes, having everything you need, but also being in gratitude for what you have. And I'll say the belief that more can come.
Mm.
And I think that we get stuck, especially when we're, on the TikTok, when we're scrolling, that you hear people talking about live in abundance, get rid of scarcity. Like, I'm abundant. I'm like, what? Like, what are you
Mhm.
even saying? So, really, abundance is yes, you have the things that you need. And then realizing that comparing yourself to what other people have makes you feel like you have less, and believing that you actually like things will actually come to you. There is more out there, that we're not trying to slice up this one tiny little pie in between, the millions of us, that there is more pies to go around. It's abundant, and that it will continue to come to you. So that's kind of how I would define abundance.
Oh, that's so good. Thank you for that. I'm writing furiously. I'm going to come back to a couple of notes, but I would love to hear, Nikhil, how you see that or any response to what Asia said.
Yeah. And thank you for having me as well. Excited to be here with both of you and for the introduction that you made for Asia and I as well. So for me, abundance is having peace, and having peace, I think when I think about like, well, what, sort of what brings me peace, it is like recognizing that I'm not lacking anything. Because it is when, I'm feeling lack in some way, anyway, that I start to feel anxious. I sort of lose a sense of peace. And so being abundant is really like having peace, like feeling like all is well.
Mhm.
And I do feel like, some of that is money, for sure.
Mhm.
100%.
And some of it is absolutely money. But I also know that there have been times when like I've had the most money I've ever had in my life and I still did not feel abundant, right? I didn't
Mhm.
feel like it was enough. And there were times when I thought that when I get to this amount, I'm going to feel abundant. And so realizing that, it money is a piece of the puzzle, but it is not the center of abundance.
Mhm. I think that's so important. I feel like we get in these cycles of striving where we're just grasping for something. And if I just get to this next place, if I get to this next place, I get to this next place, then I'll feel whole. I'll feel
Mhm.
safe. I'll feel at peace. And then you get there and you're like, it's still not there. And so then for me, I started to ask myself that question. Well, what is it that I'm even striving for anymore?
Mhm.
And why do I think that this is the thing that's going to get me there? That was another question that I had to ask myself. And then if I got to that point and I hadn't hit whatever measure of perfection that I had set up in my head for myself, well, what did that mean for me? What did that mean? Did that mean that I failed? Did that mean that I learned something along the way and that I keep going and that I pivot? Or is it that acceptance that we feel that, oh, well, it doesn't look like what I thought it was going to look like, but I actually have everything that I need. And I had to ask myself, well, how much money do I need? How many clients do I actually need in order to live my life? And so that was one of the first things that I asked myself when I was transitioning from my old job into entrepreneurship, because it could have been very easy for me just to fall back into those old cycles of jamming my calendar, having a ton of clients, feeling like I need to do all of this. Asia, what you were saying about, feeling like there's just this one pie. And if I don't get this one opportunity right now, there will never be another opportunity ever again. Right. And so those are natural things that come into our heads. And when we talk about, both of you talk about, being in gratitude for what you have and the belief that more can come, or having that peace and knowing that you're not lacking. That didn't come out of nowhere. And I feel the same, right? But we had to build those muscles. We had to carve those pathways to be able to have that understanding and truly actually believe it. Because I can know a lot of things, right? But to fully, truly believe it, so we're not feeling anxious all the time. The anxiety will come, but that we're able to pull ourselves back into balance. So I think that gets to the question I want to ask, or what I would love for you to speak more about, Asia, is just how you see this coming up in your work.
So, one, I want to make sure people know you can live in scarcity, and that's not just a mindset that you can manifest yourself out of.
Mhm.
Um, that's a real thing for people. People are growing up not having enough. People are growing up feeling like they are less than for not having enough. That is a real thing. So there's a difference between the realities and the, oh, well, it is scarce right now, but I'm going to, manifest myself out of this. Like my lights aren't turning on because we don't have money for the bill. Like two very different things. So when I'm working with my clients, one, it is kind of taking the time to be like, yo, that was hard. That was so hard. And how did I feel about it? And did I either have an opportunity to have those feelings? Have I given myself an opportunity to have those feelings? And just sit with it for a little bit, because I think a lot of times, especially as Black women, we are, whether told to or forced to, there's not a lot of room for our emotions. So we require ourselves to push through. We push it down, we bury it, we just push through, we just, keep grinding, keep hustling, study hard, work more, whatever it is to survive. But that mindset then impacts how we think about ourselves, our lives, and our money when we are not in those scarce circumstances that we might have been in the past. And I think there's a very big difference between recognizing, hey, maybe I grew up in survival, but am I currently still in survival? And making peace with that was hard then, but it looks different now. So I need to change the way I live. I need to change the way I look at my money. I need to change the way I spend my money and feel about myself because I'm not in that same position. And because, our childhood is very powerful, these moments in our life, flashpoints, these potentially financially traumatic times in our life have such a huge impact that you could be living in all of the abundance, right? You could have all the money and still feel like you are not safe, still feel like you are not secure. And that is not about what's in the bank account. That's about your feeling. That's about the memories of not having enough. So, what I'm doing with my clients is walking them through that, giving them the space to say, yo, that shit was really hard. And it breaks my heart that I had to live through that. I'm sad for younger me. And sometimes we have to let that emotion out and cry and be sad and have that moment and then figure out what we can do to not be buying the $5,000 Gucci blazer because it makes you feel better about who you are because you didn't have it before, or not feeling like you need to be rolling around in a fancy car because you didn't have it before, but realizing, hey, I can have a beautiful life and be driving a Toyota. I could be having an amazing life where I feel great about myself and have that Gucci blazer, but also that it's paired with an Old Navy jean. Like
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be this, I am constantly striving for more and more and more, because as we can see, there will always be more,
Mhm.
always.
Mhm.
So making peace with kind of where you've been, where you are now, and understanding how you're spending your money and what you're doing financially and those behaviors to make sure that you are pushing towards financial wellness and pushing towards understanding yourself, being authentic and feeling good about that person.
Thank you for that. Yeah, really understanding your story and going back to that piece, like where did the injury happen? And being able to get curious about that. And I think it's really important too what you say. It's there are systemic things that exist, right? That we are also up against. That something that I talk a lot about. We talk about, hear about imposter syndrome, and this idea that, if I just believe in myself more, if I just, stop doubting myself, then I could achieve whatever this level of success is or whatever this thing is. And I tell people a lot of times, my coaching clients, first, I feel like imposter syndrome is a scam, and you all can feel free to respond to that if you like. But I feel like imposter syndrome essentially, it's a series of real life actions and events that have told you, oftentimes, that you don't belong, that you are excluded from whatever space that you're in, particularly as a Black woman, woman of color, who are is in these spaces, and people don't want you to be there. You feel that your nervous system picks up on that when you're fearing, when you're going out. And Nakia, I want to get to you in a second to talk more about the work that you do with entrepreneurs, but when you're afraid to, negotiate a contract and thinking, they're not going to pay me this. I want to ask for this, and they're not going to pay me this. Well, if you spend a whole career being underpaid and undervalued, that's not imposter syndrome. That is misogyny, that is sexism, that is all of these things that are real life traumas, that are real life, discrimination, racism in the workplace. But then we put the onus on the person. Well, if you just believed in yourself more, then you could just ask for this amount of money and then you would be abundant and you would be fine, right? And so that systemic piece, I think, is really important that you spoke about, Asia, that you can't just manifest yourself out of that. I can't manifest myself into pay equity, right? And so it's really important that we understand that piece. And so, Nakia, when I think about your work, which I would love for you to talk more about, that you do with entrepreneurs, but then also that piece about accessing capital when people are going out. And I can have a financial therapist and like I feel good, I feel great. okay, but now how do I actually really access this money and make this like a real life manifestation
Yeah.
to be able to move this around?
Yeah. So I have been thinking a lot about, the idea that Black women are accessing 0.006% of venture capital. And obviously that's just one type of capital, and it's a very like specific type, and not every business should even be going after venture capital. But if we just use that as, a microcosm of the other spaces in which capital is not, being deployed to Black women, I've been doing a lot of thinking about the fatigue around trying to get it, because you hear that number, everybody knows those numbers, right? 0.006 or whatever. And everybody, and people are like, oh, it's not right. And we've got to create this system and this new organization. And then the Supreme Court takes them down, like all of that. And then but what about the women who are putting the pitch decks together, doing the incubators, doing all the programs, doing the whole thing?
Mhm.
And I'm saying women because I work specifically
Mhm.
with Black women entrepreneurs. But you're doing all the things, and you're doing it knowing that data. Like, you
Mhm.
already know that data going in, and yet you still have to go in and play that game.
Mhm.
The fatigue that
Mhm.
has to be associated with that is insane. And
Mhm.
nobody's calculating that, right? Like,
Mhm.
nobody's checking for the emotional, mental, and even physical toll going into a situation knowing that for no reason, no fault of my own, and nothing that is in here or not in here, I am not likely to get this.
Mhm.
And everybody goes in not likely to get, but I am 3 times less likely to get it, and this is going into a bank, than a white man with the exact same proposal. I'm 3 times less likely to get this funding. And so, like, I don't know what to do about the fatigue of that, right? And so
Mhm.
that's something that I've been thinking a lot about. And you asked me about, sort of to mention what I do.
Yeah.
So I lead a network called the Women Entrepreneur Leadership Lab. We're a membership network for Black women business owners and we have 5 pillars. So it's really about building community, forging collaborations with one another, growing in our own confidence in being in whatever spaces. And that confidence piece, and I'll speak to that on the imposter syndrome element of it. Totally in agreement with you. I have a whole, I don't know if you want to call it a rant or whatever, out in the ether somewhere, where I also talk about that's a joke. Like, it puts the onus on the person instead of recognizing that actually I've been in rooms and I've been in systems and in situations that did not recognize or honor my humanity. So naturally,
Mhm.
as a human being, I do feel a lack of belonging here, because nothing about this space says you belong. And
Mhm.
so there's a difference between saying, yeah, you can come, and oh my God, we want you here. How do we make this a place where you can thrive?
Mhm.
And so I have a whole piece out there about that somewhere on YouTube.
Mhm.
So totally resonate with that. But also recognizing that. So I lost my train of thought on that, but I
Yeah,
do.
and then even too, what I wanna hear more about, so as you're supporting women who are going through this process that is stressful, that is taxing, that is causing you to have to question yourself and your value and your worth, how do you support them through that? What are the things, kind of those wraparound things that are taking place? Because as much as we know, um, what's happening in society, what's happening in the world, something else that I feel very strongly about, particularly for Black women, because we're Black women and that's what we're talking about right now. I feel like we're being called into community. I feel like we're being called to deepen how we support each other. Yes, we do want to have equity and access to all these other external things. But what I love about your work and why I wanted you here is because we also support each other. We've always supported each other. When we think about Black women, we think about entrepreneurship. I was just talking about on Labor Day the other day, the labor movement was started by Black women, Black laundresses, actually. The Atlanta washerwoman strike of 1881, 16 years out of enslavement. These Black women were doing this backbreaking work. They were the first, some of the first people out of enslavement that could work from home because they could bring the laundry home. So then they became the political powerhouses of the community because they weren't under the guise of these former overseers, now quote unquote employers. And so they could organize, they could strategize. They were the heads of the household. And so there is this power that also can happen in entrepreneurship, and that I feel like Black women from our ancestors, from the universe, are calling us back to that.
Yeah.
So that when the Fearless Fund is going to the Supreme Court and getting sued, it's like, yeah, that sucks, but we weren't getting that money anyway. And so how do we continue to create multiple avenues of support, community engagement? We think about, my dream is to create my own new version of Black Wall Street. Like, how can we, when we think about Tulsa, right? Like those lessons in community. And so I would love to hear you talk more about that.
Yeah, this is like so in alignment with the work that we're doing now. So I didn't mention She's Well Networked, which is a nonprofit that was birthed out of originally doing this work just in this membership network, but recognizing that like the things that we're learning, the things that we're grappling with, that we're experiencing, like they are a bigger part of this ecosystem for Black women in entrepreneurship. And so everybody's not going to join a network, but there are things that we're learning or things that we're exploring and things that we want to be able to project. And so She's Well Network really amplifies some of like what we're learning in the network itself. And one of our or sort of our big like rallying cry, really, I call it, is reclaiming our grandmother's stuff. And so we came up with it. One of my board members, Delshan, came up with it last year. We were at our first like board retreat, full day meeting, and we were sitting just on this kind of like patio balcony thing in this new like high rise penthouse place down on the water near like right off the community I'm from, which was created to segregate returning World War I and II veterans from the city. And so it's on the outskirts of the city. You got to take a bridge over and to get in there. There's a police station out there. It's got its own hospital. And I was like,
Baltimore.
Yeah, it's in Baltimore. It's called Cherry Hill. So, I'm sitting there, and I was born there. My parents were born there, and I'm like, it's not lost on me that like I'm looking into Cherry Hill right now while we're talking about, entrepreneurship, building wealth, all of that, and that like none of us were like supposed to be at a table like this, right? It was very intentional. The design. I mean, Baltimore taught the whole country how to like keep Black people out of wealth, essentially, because it kept us out of housing, taught the whole country how to redline, all of it. And so Delshan's like, yeah, like, I really feel like this work is about reclaiming our grandmother's stuff. Like, we're not actually new. So you bringing up this labor movement and the women who started it, I don't have anything to write with. I'm like, oh, I got to jot that down, because that's what we were talking about. Like, this isn't new to us, right? Entrepreneurship is not new to us. Organizing isn't new to us. Being in community, we've been doing it. It's the only way we would have survived being here, right? Is network and community. But we have this like these myths, shared with us that like we're not strong networkers, or we don't have networks. We don't know how to network. And that is why, we don't get the money, or that is why we don't have, enough access to capital. So, one of the things we do is just like debunk that with like the reality of our stories. And those stories have so much power. And so that's why that's another one that I need to get. And to remind ourselves, right, that our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, they were doing this. They were forming businesses. Those of us who had a family house, who had, the first person be able to go to college, whatever. A lot of times those were through entrepreneurial endeavors that were happening on the side or whatever, when we did not have access to mainstream dollars, right? And access to funding. And so one, it's remembering that like this is not new space for us. So we don't have to feel like we're some like amateurs who just got into the game and they've been playing it much longer. No, they've been recognized for playing it, they've been awarded for playing it, but we've been playing it. And so, yeah, that reclaiming our grandmother stuff is our rallying cry. So one, it's about telling our stories, but two, we're very deliberate about connecting Black women, bankers, and people in the funding space to our members and those we're in community with, as we understand, their needs and such, because it lowers the level of, intimidation, anxiety, or whatever when you have been denied, or the data going into the conversation about your chances of getting the capital. It at least allows you to kind of like walk into the space, hopefully with some sense of community already existing. And what we've seen is these Black women bankers going back to their underwriters and telling the story of a human, not a file and not a case and not a number. And so women who had previously been denied funding for certain circumstances or whatever that show up in their reports and things, have an advocate and a real person to say like, yeah, but she went through a divorce and, whatever the story is. And so again, back to stories, like the story piece is so rich. And so it really is finding the right people to advocate and tell the stories, and like us continuing to not undervalue the storytelling part of like who we are and our journey. And as we continue to like galvanize the community.
Yeah, it's the human aspect that we are human beings. I love that you say that. And something I actually want to ask you both. I do this with all of my guests in one way or another. But if you could shout out any ancestor, it could be a direct ancestor in your family lineage or someone who you might just respect. I don't know if you all see on my shirt, I have Shirley Chisholm, boss, my organization, the Chisholm Group. I talk about her probably in every episode. But I got James Baldwin behind me, Toni Morrison behind me. Those are all ancestors as well. But if you could think of any ancestor that you have that has in one way or another informed where you are now, the work that you are doing, which ancestor of yours would that be that you would want to shout out or talk about?
So I'm going to tell you a quick story. It's not one person, but we're going to get a little woo-woo is the best way to put it.
That's why I asked. I love it.
So we're going woo-woo. I have a friend who is a spiritual healer, and just on a random Instagram story or so, she was like, you keep asking for these things, but have you intentionally asked your ancestors and spirit for the things that you want? And I might cry thinking about it because it was just such a powerful moment. And this was probably, I'll say 5 years ago. 5? Yeah, about 4 or 5 years ago. So I was like, you know what? That's a great point. I don't think I've ever been so intentional in asking for something. Let me do that. And I still had my therapy practice. I was like doing what I'm doing. And I said, spirit, ancestors. And I really meant it. I was like, if I am supposed to be doing financial therapy and putting myself out there in the world, can you just give me a sign? I just need to know. And the very next day, I am on a literal path, just a normal path that is around a body of water that people run. I was walking my baby because I was on maternity leave. I was like, okay, let me put them in the stroller. I hear Tiffany, the Budgetnista Aliche, walking and talking, like minding her own business, just talking to somebody and walking. And I was like, oh, that is it. That's the sign right there. I'm on the path. Thank you. And that's what I have asked whenever I am like, am I supposed to be doing? Because at first I was like, I don't know how. What does this mean? Like, will
Mhm.
people understand what I'm trying to do? And that was the first time that I was so intentional of asking. It was less than 24 hours. I got the answer. And
Mhm.
anytime I doubt myself, it's literally, it is always like a, hey, can you give us a quote about financial therapy in the media? And I
Mhm.
was like, wow, Asia, thinking about you wouldn't even have put yourself out there because
Mm,
you were scared unless you asked.
mm.
And
Mhm.
they answered. And I was like, okay, thank you. I trust.
Beautiful. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So I think it's several, but for me, it's like picking up quotes. Um, so one is Gwendolyn Brooks, and she has one quote about "We are each other's business. We are each other's bond and manifest. We are each other's business." Is
Mhm.
one of the calls to action for me that like as we are building our business, like we are actually each other's business. And so that's
Mhm.
one for me. And then another is Toni Morrison, her quote about, the very purpose of racism is to distract. And so that's a huge part of my it's like a reminder to me, like whenever I'm going into the mode of like about to argue a point or whatever, like, nope, is this my work? Nope, nope. Their businesses
Mhm.
are my work.
Mhm. Mhm.
And like seeing those grow. So those two together, like,
Mhm.
are like just powerful, like reminders, strong reminders to me, like every day. And so, their quotes are their words are, sort of them. And so
Mhm.
I have them, on my left and my right, like keeping me
Mhm.
in the center.
Yes, I love that quote too by Toni Morrison in particular. I actually did like a whole post about it a couple of weeks ago. I think when I don't even like to say his name, but that other person running for president tried to say that Kamala had just turned black, and then I saw like
Mhm.
85 think pieces on it. I was like, y'all, if y'all don't go touch the grass and stop
Yep,
defending
yep,
this mess from
yep,
this man that is just
yep,
seeking to keep us exhausted,
yep,
just throwing stuff out there, like just
yeah,
ignore it. So
yeah.
no, I love that Toni Morrison quote. And I asked that, like I said, because well, before this episode, we had an episode called Freed Spirit. And so the ability to really tap into our spirituality, whatever you call, God, the universe, whatever it is for you, right? Respecting all traditions, but that there is power in that connecting again to those who came before us, to asking those questions, to getting curious, to knowing their lessons. Like the fact that that's why the story has stuck with me. These Black women in 1881, 16 years out of enslavement, had the knowledge, the wherewithal, the power to launch a nationwide well, it impacted nationwide the strike in Atlanta, where they were able to raise these wages based on the things that they knew, their inherent intelligence that I think what you were talking about a little bit earlier, Nakia, is often discounted because we see things, they have to look a certain way. You have to have a business plan. This business plan has to look like X, Y, and Z. You have to go through this type of financial model. You have to go to this type of bank. But we know all of those things were put into place to keep us out,
Yeah.
because we know, all things being equal, we built this country, right?
Mhm.
And that we, even being held back for so long, have still been able to thrive in spite of. And that's where the fear is coming from. That's why you see all these court cases and wanting to battle this, because it's like these Black women are coming, and we are afraid because they think that we're going to do to them what they did to us, and we're like, we just want to be free. We just want to live. We just want to have self-autonomy. We want to have the ability to raise our families, and to have joy and to have peace and belonging, right? That we all deserve, because it's not just one pie.
Yeah.
But that's how this country is designed, that we think there's just a finite amount of resources, not even just this country, this world, right? That we operate like there's a finite amount of resources, and that some people want to have it all, and they don't want anybody to have anything else. This shirt, this Shirley Chisholm, if they don't invite you and give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And I like to think that she would even evolve that a bit to understand nobody owns the table. Nobody owns the table. Nobody has a right to deny or invite anybody. The table is our shared humanity, and it's our inherent right to have a piece of it, right? So I can go on and on about that, but I wanted to ask, kind of backtracking just a little bit, not backtracking, but Asia, when thinking about, these stories that we talk about our ancestors, this generational wealth, right, that comes from this knowledge and this wisdom and this power. But oftentimes when I'm talking to Black women who are thinking about going out and working for themselves, it's just this overwhelming amount of fear that is often rooted in how they grew up, even if they grew up with money, but that they were told that you need to be safe and you need to be cautious when you're making decisions, that you can't do anything like quit your job, right? And go start your own business. And you don't, like, how are you going to make money? And so all these questions start to come up. And then it's just this kind of spiral of fear. And so I just wanted to hear, as you think about particularly women who are going out as entrepreneurs, maybe what is some, I don't know if advice is the right word, but maybe thoughts that you have, and even with your book as well, and the work that you're doing. But what is some advice that you would have for women who are thinking about maybe going out on their own, but just from their own family, all of the fear that is surrounding that decision?
Yeah. So, I mean, I am leaving this conversation feeling so filled. Like, let me just first say that I feel like everything that we've talked about, it is the truth that we're all just holding. And that's the important part of understanding that this is part of our history. Like, it is in our blood generationally. It's just there, whether you want it to be or not. It's just present. And understanding that, but then also feeling empowered by it, is what I feel like I'm taking away from this. And let me tell you, it is fucking scary. Like, let's just call it what it is. It is very scary to cut the every 2-week check, to decide where are my health benefits coming from? How am I going to invest for retirement? What am I going to do? I don't know if this is going to work. That is so scary. But please don't let fear stop you. Like, it should not stop you. It should fuel you and help you understand that actually, once you get to this point and understanding, you have more security than you would if you were working for somebody, because you can always pivot. You can always add something else. You can always talk to somebody else. Literally, the world opens up, but it does take growth and strength and learning to understand, hey, I need to think about this different. I need to have a different perspective. But it is scary. Like, to be clear, it is very scary. Every day, right? Like, I've been doing this on my own, like full-time, working for myself on my own for 4 years. And I am still scared, but I know there is no shot I can go back, because I believe in so much of what I'm doing and what I want to grow and how important this is, that I can't stop, it is now part of me. Like, it's part of my fabric. If you told me 4 years ago, hey, Asia, you're going to have a book that's coming out about financial therapy, I would laugh. Traditionally published, like, this is going to be in a bookstore, I'd be like, who are you talking about? I love that for her, but that's not me. Right. And it wasn't because I didn't think I was capable. It was just, I couldn't see how. And I think that's what makes us fearful as well, is that we want to know the how. You don't need to know the how. You just need to know the who. and the who is you. So let's just do it. Like, you just put one foot in front of the other. Don't worry about what the how is going to look like, because you may not be able to understand it yet, because you have to go through the hardship and learn and grow and then get to that point. So do it.
And the full how is never going to be like, it's not going to be completely like unveiled. Like, you get part of the how along the way. I mean, this is the most, being in business and having children is the most spiritual journey you will ever be on.
Yes.
The most, like, show you your stuff, show you your mess, show you where you need to, like, be laid bare. It just is that. And so it is. I don't even know what else to say about it, but you know, and the fear does not actually go away. Even when you do it, it doesn't go away. So it'll be 10 years for me in January, and that I've been in business for myself. You know, and I will say, like, I'm a married woman. I've been married the whole journey. So I recognize that that is different. That is a different level of privilege in some cases than, you know, maybe a woman who has to, like, figure out all the pieces herself around her healthcare and all of that. So, you know, that's just a thing that I recognize. But it's still scary, you know, because I've also, you know, gone into my adult life wanting to be able to take care of myself and make something for myself and create a thing and contribute and all of that. And so, and that's the whole thing. That's a whole nother journey I had to be on of recognizing, like, but you're not actually by yourself. So, like, you know, sort of calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
This was the point of the partnership.
Yeah, this is the point of it. And that's a whole nother conversation. But, you know, just saying to the women out there who are listening, like, the fear doesn't actually go away. I'm, you know, scared every other day or something. But it is on owning and recognizing, like, I'm not going to have the whole plan. Like, the whole plan isn't going to be clear to me. But if I take a step, so that's another one of the quotes, you know, you don't have to see the whole staircase, take the first step, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But and that one I have to live with all the time too. It's like, all right, I took a step, and then I thought, you know, it was going to unveil itself, and it doesn't.
It's like, good job, keep going, go to the next step now.
Unlock the next level. It's literally like playing Mario Brothers.
That's what I say. It's like a video game.
The whole thing.
You can't see the map. You don't see the map. You just can see the little piece of the map, and then you defeat the big boss, and you go lay down, and you go to the Bahamas. Like, I'm about to go next week because I'm tired. I've been battling, and I decided to start a podcast in the middle of the summer. But another quote that came up when you were talking that I live by is, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. That's Audre Lorde. And when we think about this and going back to the healing aspect of it, that is the point of healing. Fear is important, right? Like, if we didn't have fear, then babies would stick their hands in fire, right? Like, we need to have that as human beings to stay alive. It is a natural, you know, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, all of that. All of those things are necessary in our nervous system. The danger is when we get stuck in the fear. And so understanding, and in my growth, I've started to understand, you know, how to investigate that fear. And so recognize, like, oh, I'm afraid there's something happening right now. Okay. Usually in the past, I would be like, don't be afraid, you know, and so you're at a battle with yourself now, right? And so now it's just like, oh, okay, I'm afraid. All right. And almost instantly that calms me down.
Yeah.
When I just allow it. Go ahead, please.
If I can share a tip on how I deal with my fears, like, when it was, like, really at its height around starting a thing and a new thing, I named her, gave her a whole name. I was like, Keisha. I named her Keisha. That was my fear. Because Keisha's, when I was growing up, Keisha to me was like, I'm sorry, not Keisha, Lisa. Because Lisa's always had it together. Like, Lisa's, you know, they were on top of that thing. So I named her Lisa. And I really sat with myself, like, why won't you let me move forward on this thing? I want to move forward on this. And, like, really had to, like, sit with it and understand, like, what the fear was trying to, like, protect me from. It was like, well, I don't want to fail out loud and in public. Okay, so what if I do this a little privately, right? Like, I don't launch it publicly. I do a pilot first and launch it privately. This is when I was starting a network. And so I initially sat on it for almost 2 years because Lisa was like, no, girl, we are not doing this. We do not have all the
Yeah.
answers. It's not all figured out. And then I had to, say like, I got to move forward on this. I can't sleep. I got to do it. So let's negotiate. And the negotiation came down to, I get to move forward on this as a pilot. If the pilot is successful and it's not advertised, it's just people I invite privately. And if that is successful, then I get to launch it bigger. And that's exactly what I did.
I love that.
And so something I was just writing down as we're heading towards the end of this episode, but and I want to allow space for you all just for any last thoughts, but I really feel like as we're thinking about abundance, some of the keys, even to even get to that point, number one, really unpacking our histories, understanding everything that has come before us that has contributed to the way that we move through the world for any number of things, but especially as it relates to work, money, our place in the world, our value, our passion, our purpose, all of those things, and understanding all the things that have contributed to that. Also, this piece about taking things step by step. I feel like what came to me as you all were talking was the need to be present and being in the present moment. And it's really difficult to do that. And why I tell all of my clients, my coaching clients, if you're going to start your own business, my first piece of advice to you is to get a therapist, because I'm not a therapist. And this will tap dance on all of your stuff. I don't care if you've been to therapy in the past. If you are starting a business, you need to go back. You need to go find somebody that you can work through this with, because I can coach you all day on any number of things. But if you have a blockage, then you're just going to be wasting your money. You're going to be sending me money, and I'm going to try to help you to move forward with your business. But if when you were 12 years old, X, Y, and Z thing happened around finances in your family, and now it's causing you a block, I can't work through that with you. You'll have to find a mental health professional. So that was another thing that was coming to mind. Also, the importance of self-trust. I feel like oftentimes we outsource our genius to other people. We're often, what do you think about this? Can you look at this? Well, do you think I need to, girl, what do you want to do? What feels good to you? When you think about this, what feels good in your body? Does your nervous system settle? If you feel anxious, that's when you start asking yourself. And mine is, my nickname when I was growing up was Najee. So I'm like, Najee, what's wrong? Like, what do you need? You need a nap? Okay. Why are you worried right now? Oh, because you feel like if you do this, then people are going to judge you. Do you really care what those people think? No, I don't. Okay. Well, this isn't a problem then, is it? No. Okay. Well, I'm gonna go for my walk now, right? And then not giving yourself a preemptive no. Oftentimes when we get so far down there, when we're like, oh, well, I want to leave my job, but and yes, you should plan. I will say that. Please plan. But you get to this space of, well, in 2 years, well, I don't know what this world will be in a month. And so if you're getting stuck on, well, if I quit my job today, will I be able to buy a house in 2 years? Well, there's so many factors in there that, do you need to know that today? Do you need to know that right now in order to make this decision? Or is this something that you can learn along the way, instead of giving yourself a preemptive no, because you've told yourself whatever story, created whatever scenario in your head that doesn't exist? Oftentimes when I'm doing that, because I still do it, and I'm thinking about, well, okay, I need to do X, Y, and Z, I'll hear like a voice, and the ancestors or what, but it'll be like, why are you over there? Come back here. Like you are all the way down there, and you're not supposed to be there. I was reading or watched something online, and it was like, it's kind of like if you're going on a road trip. And this is back in the day when we had like MapQuest and stuff like that, right? For the elder millennials and above that are listening. But when you had to print out directions when you're going on a road trip, and when you leave your house, and if it's at night, right? You can only see what your headlights are illuminating in front of you. You can't see 50 miles down the road. You don't know what's happening down there. Are you not going to set out on your journey because your headlights aren't illuminating 50 miles down the road? or are you just going to go with what's illuminated in front of you, take whatever detours may come, slow down when you need to, take a rest stop, right? Like all of these things are so important on this journey. But I wanted to just give you both space to whatever you may be thinking about, whatever just overarching advice that you may have for listeners who either may be thinking about going out on their own as entrepreneurs, maybe they already are entrepreneurs, or maybe just in general, maybe not even thinking about entrepreneurship at all, but are thinking about how they can have better relationship with abundance, with finance, from you both. So whichever one would like to go first. Any last thoughts?
I think that figuring out what brings you peace, returning back to the idea that I really see abundance as peace, understanding what brings you peace and what are disruptors of your peace, and for the things that are disruptors of your peace to get to build your toolkit, your support, whether it is therapy, whether it is a financial therapist, whatever the areas of your life that you feel some scarcity and some lack of safety, because sometimes the thing we might attach ourselves to needing to make more money and needing to be successful and all that, and we never even struggled with like money, right? Like money wasn't the place where we lacked security. So that's my story. Money wasn't the place where I lacked security, but it is the things that did create a feeling of not being safe that manifested itself in my need to money's going to make me feel safer. Having my own, building my own thing will make me feel safer, when it wasn't, so realizing that mental health thing is tricky, right? And it's not always a one-to-one ratio on like the thing that you wrestle with being the thing that was, the trauma you experienced, or the thing that triggered your need for security and safety. And so it's really, being willing to be laid bare, and but then knowing that in the being laid bare, you will be clothed again. You will come undone, and know that you will come back together masterfully. So
I love that. And I know, Asia, you probably have so many things to say about this, but just as Nakia was saying that, it made me remember, I did grow up with different issues around scarcity and things like that. But even as an adult, like I've made more than anybody in my family has ever made before. And so again, that continuing like, well, why don't I feel better? Right. And so one of the questions that we talked, it was like, what are you coping? How are you using money to cope? And what are you trying to cope from? And so for me, it was like, oh, you're bored. You're lonely. You need people in your life. And when you get bored, you pick up your phone and you're like, oh, Target got today, right? And so it wasn't even necessarily something dealing directly with the money. It was other things where there was a lack in my life. And that's the thing with anything, right? When you're talking about scarcity, where you're feeling like you don't have enough, or you're feeling like you're not enough, and you start to fill it with these other things. So I love that point. But AJ, go ahead.
I mean, I feel like you both covered so much. And I think the last thing that I could possibly say is just start asking yourself the harder questions, and make yourself answer them, because you're right. It is about it may not be the money thing. It might just be the coping thing. It might be that you're using money to cope. So you have to kind of start at the root, like what's really going on. Do not push your feelings down. Listen to them. They're trying to tell you something. So yeah, ask yourself the hard questions so it can come up.
Beautiful. So where can people find you both?
You can find me at my website, which is Asia Evans Counseling. I'm on IG and TikTok sometimes, AJAE Therapy as well. And you can find Feel Good Finance wherever you get your books.
Wonderful.
You can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram at Nakia Drummond, Nakia by Design on Instagram, but also She's Well Networked on LinkedIn and on Instagram and on YouTube.
Okay. Thank you so much to you both for your energy, for your expertise, your brilliance, and joy today. And thank you to the listeners. And I look forward to talking to you soon.
Bye, ladies. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Freed Black Girl Podcast. Remember to like, share, subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend. Sending you much love, good energy, and peace. Until next time.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things that I should say. Say them loud, say them clear, for the whole round world to hear. I wish I could share all the love that's in my heart